Brazil bans X. Who's next?
This is Decentral Lens, distilling the crypto news you need to know and why.
All right, welcome everybody. This is Decentral Lens, your independent news source for all things crypto, Bitcoin, runes, macro, everything affecting us and everything going on in our world. I am your host, Blue Toshi, followed by my childhood friend and co-host, Disco.
Hello, everybody. Excited for another week. I will say I had a lot of little kind of morsels from last week's conversation with Ski God that have manifested in interesting ways and in kind of how I've looked at, some of my approach. So not to plug our own show or anything, but if you didn't have a chance to check it out yet, I would recommend going back and kind of looking at that conversation which we had with him, which wasn't so much about, necessarily the technicals of trading and stuff. It was more along the lines of kind of, how to approach things. And it really did have a lasting impression on me. So I really appreciated that conversation.
Yeah, the Ski God interview was fun to do. It wasn't, it didn't go where we thought it would go, but it gives you the history from Degen poker player to Degen trader to Degen ordinals enjoyer, Solana enjoyer, and meme coin enjoyer. And I learned a lot too, and it made me realize that some of the trading decisions I've made, especially in the past, were pretty like, I can't miss out on this, and we always equate that to, if you're reading like a story, an inside scoop on the cover of the Wall Street Journal, the trade's probably already been made and you're either exit liquidity or, you're jumping on the bandwagon. So, thanks to Ski God for a great interview, and God, all of them have been good. Eric Voorhees and Scribe. So we've had some great people on, and later today we're going to have one of my favorite artist curators, my favorite in the space and the person I trust before I buy any piece of art or just to learn how to think about art is Stephen Miller.
Yeah, I'm extremely excited for that conversation, and just how we've been doing the show for coming up on 12 months or so, and the most interesting part is kind of the ingredients that all mix together. And we always talk about the kind of the weaving of the stories and the themes, and a lot of the things that we hit on in kind of the news portion of last week's show have kind of developed a little bit more as well and kind of been built out a little bit. So it's probably where we should take a look at starting this conversation this week as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see the logo. Thank you, Venice, and thank you, Disco, for creating this logo. But let's just jump right in. So X gets banned in Brazil. What's going on, Disco?
Dude, it's a crazy story. And, we were looking at everything from, we saw what was going on in France with Telegram last week, and, and then we look at what happened in Brazil with X, and they had north of 20 million users in Brazil. And they pretty much I think they imposed like a potential fine on the users of close to $9,000 per day. So it's not something where you're just going to be like, who cares? Let's just roll with it. And as a result, kind of one of the out stories of this banning of X has been this big growth in Blue Sky, which is Jack Dorsey's decentralized social network is kind of how it's built. And you've seen that grow just astronomically. I think it went from like, a couple thousands users up to 2 million users over like 3 or 4 days. And it became the number one in the app shop and everything like that. So obviously people are attracted to
app shop. Sorry.
Sorry, dude.
And the old blacksmithy app shop,
All right, thanks. But obviously people are interested and attracted to how X is portraying news and the UX and everything like that. So they were kind of looking for something similar. I guess the biggest competitor to X in Brazil had been Instagram Threads, which I haven't heard a thing about since like their big like first week launch at least in the US. And it was like, Instagram Threads. And then I haven't heard about it much since. So it's just interesting to see how that will switch into a different network. But the bigger picture obviously is how are governments, able to just flip a switch on something that had that much traction within a country. And, it really just leads to a lot of the questions that we've been asking and kind of noodling on, for months and months, which is, how can something, are you going to get rugged on something that you've been using, consistently as kind of a community and a news source and everything like that. And we do a lot of, we've put a lot of our faith on, working in the X ecosystem, and we've had a lot of success with it. Like, it's been very fun to be able to kind of explore as they build out their different video capabilities, which I think we're kind of on the forefront of. So it's kind of jarring just to see like, hey, it can be like no soup for you and you're out. And, how do you then kind of move along and continue your understanding of the news and your communities and things from that perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a huge kudos to Elon Musk, obviously, and Linda Yaccarino, who are supporting freedom of speech. There was a terrifying soundbite from Kamala Harris, and basically, so here's the chain of events. So Mark Zuckerberg basically sends a letter to that Republican congressman and says, since before the 2016 election, we've been told to suppress certain things. We've been told to suppress COVID. We've been told to suppress certain things about the Biden family. And he basically admitted this and said, I'm not going to be donating to some of these open balloting things that obviously are more democratic leaning. So you've got that admitting that the government, and more specifically the Biden administration executive branch, put pressure on Facebook to suppress this information. So now you fast forward to Elon and X. Kamala comes directly out and says, X can't be doing what they're doing. They simply, like, Facebook's playing by the rules. Why can't X? And so basically by the rules means that you agree to not have freedom of speech and break the First Amendment and suppress voices in America. It makes me really angry, and it's so hypocritical. And I think a lot of people maybe who don't go on X, because there's this guy, I think we both would agree, and everyone in X would agree, there's definitely a cesspool of bots and people who are shillers, right. And there's terrible people on there. But you know what? I would say some of the best ideas and the greatest minds are here. And we don't have direct access maybe to the algorithm, but we do get more untethered information that's going on. And it's not just kind of this groupthink and what the executive branch and the government deems what we should be hearing. So it's really disappointing on so many fronts. But she's basically saying Facebook doesn't have freedom of speech and we suppress it. X shouldn't either.
Yeah. And it's just like, how ironic or not, of course, the story is not getting, as I said last week, it's not getting the legs or the coverage that I would have anticipated or expected when you have one of the biggest media platforms and founder and CEO, saying, hey, we conducted censorship at the, at the will of the government. And, you're not seeing that spread outside of, very many media outlets or platforms. So part and parcel to the bigger problem, right? Like, so that story is, of course, then not going to be broadcast significantly, and people aren't going to be that aware. You're going to have your normie friends, and you bring it up like you're all, worked up and, hey, we got to do something, and it's like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about, whatever. And you kind of look like you're more fringe for being upset about it. So it's just, again, I don't want the show to just be about, these sort of issues and stuff, but I think that we have to at least shine a light on some of this stuff, because I think as independent media, we need to be aware of kind of the bigger picture and, what people are, able to source as their own news and form their opinions.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I don't want to just keep harping on the same things, but then again, like the First Amendment and freedom of speech, if we don't have that for our children and their children, like if then what do we have?
Yeah.
What do we have? If there's certain things you can't say, we've already seen different elements of this kind of cancel culture. And nobody wants to have people hatred against them or people's feelings hurt, but and freedom of speech, obviously 100% is a tricky issue, but to suppress it and to control your narrative through what the Biden and Kamala administration has done is simply deplorable. And it's on X right now for Linda and Elon and kind of all these freedom folks, they're carrying the torch right now. But like you said before, Disco, we've put a lot into X. I know a lot of other people have, and they've seen the algorithms kind of change their reach, maybe to get smaller. I think Elon is doing great work with this freedom of speech, but yeah, are we at risk? If he's at risk, or they try and compromise him, which they probably are with this whole Brazil thing, right? Like now that he's going more to a subscription model from an ad model, they've already tried to have the advertisers basically shun him. And I think that's where he infamously told, was it Bob Iger of Disney to like go F off. He's like, and the guy basically was like, kiss my ring. And he's like, F you. And he's like, wait, excuse me? He's like, yeah.
That doesn't compute. That's not supposed to happen.
Like he was so shocked that it happened. And we all were, because nobody's really done that before. Everybody's bent the knee. And he isn't. We've got other places to go for us Bitcoiners. We've got Nostr, which Primal right now is probably the best front end for Nostr, but it's incredible. It looks like Twitter. You can have the media. It's more uncensored. You can take your account with you. Obviously on the ETH side, there's Farcaster, which is, that is heavily VC backed, but that one you can take your account with you. So similar properties there. And it raises a question for both you and I that we've been bringing up a lot. X is the one place still where all of us, especially in crypto, I would say reporters, politicians are probably the big three where we all come to share news, get news. It's the town square. But Ethereum's already gone to Farcaster. A lot of hardcore Bitcoiners are going to Nostr. So like people are already leaving, and a lot of big names are already leaving. So does that, Elon's doing his best to make this the town square, and I hope it is, but is it at risk? And are we at risk of fragmenting the entire crypto industry more and more? I think Bitcoin maxis would say, who cares? Yes. Like I want a Bitcoin system. Ethereans might say, hey, I want Farcaster. I want it on that chain. Base is easy to use as an L2. Like I want it easy there. We've got our frames, which are awesome in Farcaster, but the bifurcation is scary to me.
Yeah. And yeah, because it leads to what? Like, echo chamber stuff, right? Like you want to be the town square, but a town square relies, the payout of that is other voices and other perspectives. And that gets more and more dangerous as people may flee and go to their own kind of, their own neighborhood or whatever it is. They're just going to, continue to build out your theses or whatever's going on. And you're not really going to get that discussion and conversation, which will then turn to it. What pissed me off the most about the censorship side of it was, I really think that we're at a time where we have so many new tools to create and to really, I've been talking about this forever, what are we going to see? What great art movements and what, kind of new formats are we going to see? And, hopefully we're going to see things that are relevant, but it goes off of the input that you're given. So if you're not told the stories and you're not allowed to react to those stories organically, what's going to come of that that's going to become new and valued and vital? Because, free conversation and free expression is what leads to progression. And if that's being squashed, and we are actually seeing examples of that on the reg, we're seeing this almost every week, for the past couple of months, where it's like, hey, and this, you got to pay attention to that story, as they're not just one-offs. It's part of it's kind of moving towards a theme that definitely needs to be, kind of shouted from the rooftop so that people are paying attention to this instead of just kind of, hey, well, it's not going to affect me. We'll be fine.
Yeah, freedom of speech. I love your take there, and you had it last week too. But freedom of speech is creativity, and sets the groundwork for creativity. If you cannot have a free and open way to be creative, and that's suppressed, and then I think even if that does go into art, like, well, can I make this? Am I going to offend the wrong people? Even if you don't take it to that next step for art, I think just limiting freedom of speech probably curtails the large or big mindedness and the experience you have of the world to get inputs from all over the place. Like Lynn Alden or someone had a great post. It was just a poll. And it was like, did you learn critical thinking in school at any point? She just said school. Did you see this one, Disco?
No, but I'd love where you're going. Continue.
Yeah. So she asked who was taught critical thinking. Guess what the percentage that said yes was?
20.
Yeah. It was 20. It's 2080. It's 2080. Good guess. So
I'm happy about getting the guess right, but I'm sad about what it represents.
well, think about this. Now, obviously, if you're a philosophy major in college or an English major, yeah, like it's probably baked in. But I wrote to that post, like, would you say, college aside, just high school, you know, you and I grew up together, would you say that our high school taught us critical thinking?
No.
I would say for a high school, yes. I had some good English teachers, and I was in crappy, like, Blutoshi read slow, and I'm better now, but I think
you're a lefty.
I'm a lefty, but no, but I'm saying, like, I'm not saying they spent the entire thing on critical thinking, but I can look back at a couple of my English teachers and at least they were laying the groundwork. Now college, and I know you were a big English journalist guy, college is where that was really laid down. But I guess my theory is that, you know, obviously people with, we'll call it higher education, but you know, at this point in time, like, I don't even know if we want to use that word because there's so much craziness going on there, but you learn critical thinking in college, but I think more upscale communities and better schools teach critical thinking. And I say better, you know what? I just used a word is that even true? I think it's more upscale, gets critical thinking built in. And I think a lot of places that are middle class or lower class, I don't think they're given at. And I wonder if that's not on purpose to give people critical thinking skills. So anyway, it's a theory of mine, but the 80-20, you know, in her poll, you know, Lynn Alden's got a huge following. That poll was thousands and thousands of people. You know, we'll pull it up later, but that's, to me, that means a lot. And I think critical thinking in what we're talking about with X in Brazil and freedom of speech and, you know, the First and Fourth Amendments, like, we need to be vocal. We need to be kind to our neighbor. We need to be vocal to fight for these things, or they'll be gone. You can't, like, the founding fathers, I think, would be disgusted at what they're seeing right now and how corporations have kind of co-opted so much of this freedom of ideas.
So just to springboard off what you're saying from the critical thinking side of it, one of the things that I think is, you know, we always talk about how we're kind of attracted to the other people in this pond that have gone down the rabbit hole of this. I think that's I don't know the percent, but I would say that that's a very strong shared trait of people that are engaged in kind of this movement that we're a part of in embracing, you know, this new, you know, kind of way of looking at things and way to transact and this value structure and all that. So that may be what's fearing, you know, what some of these folks are fearing when they're like, oh, we've got to stop this, because you may have an alignment of folks that are able to think critically and get them, you know, we've seen some of that motivation, you know, kind of impact some of the political side of things recently. And it's like, that's a galvanizing folks that have that capacity to take that next level of thought and to look at things from a critical perspective. I would argue that one of the reasons that we feel so validated within this space and with the community within this space is it's almost taken for granted that the people that we're going to associate with and converse with are going to be folks that look at things from a critical lens. And that is where we kind of get frustration when we're conversing with, you know, quote, normies who just aren't kind of tuned in and tuned into that. And that may be a central differentiator between a normie and someone who's kind of going down the path that we are, and why we attract each other, because we're taking that next step of trying to look at things from all different sides and really try to look at the root basis of why we're thinking this way and why we're excited about what we're engaged in.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't have said it more eloquently myself, but this is there's something magical about this space. And you know, I've said it a million times, we've got awesome coders, artists, collectors, content creators, whatever you want to call us, people like we'll just call it deep divers and deep thinkers, and we all have come together in this space. And I think the ideas that are coming out of this to, and there's a lot of scams out there, but overall, the ideas that come out of the ordinals, runes, Bitcoin, and Ethereum space, Solana too, are building blocks for making society a better place.
Yeah. And for having just that kind of internal desire to see something progress and change, you know what I mean? Like to push yourself from it, as opposed to just, oh no, that's what I was told. Okay, that's cool. I don't really care about that. That doesn't impact my day to day, and kind of use that as something. So I think there's just a different kind of wiring, I think, where you're not content with the acceptance of what's happening, and you kind of feel that need to continue down. And, we have it from a scribe, like scribe will get a piece of sort of information that I might get, but he's going to flush that thing out and figure out what it could mean and do that. And that's what I think is so fun. So we were talking about how great it is to have these conversations on the show with people who are kind of having somewhat different avenues that they're really, anchored in, but the commonality of this desire to really flush it out is what I think is so compelling. And I think that's one of the main goals of this program as we continue to develop, is to try to provide a forum and a voice for people who are really kind of going down different alleyways and really kind of exposing their findings, because I think that as a whole, we're all going to be generally appreciative of any kind of information we get. I don't want to say freaking alpha, like I'm not talking about that, but their discoveries and takeaways on the journeys that interest them are what's very compelling to me.
Yeah. It's so funny you say that. Like this show is everything that wouldn't suggest like trying to garner ratings. Like we try and think super deep on stuff. We alpha, we don't like it. Like if anything, we almost warn more of like, this feels a little scammy, so we're probably not even endearing ourselves to some of the creators, where certainly the artists we are, but a lot of the builders where it feels suspect, or where the team isn't doxed or anything. Like, we try and look out for folks, and obviously everyone's got to do their own research, but in such a FUD FOMO cycle brain in this space, we're so anti-alpha that, it's sick. And if someone sees our timeline, especially when Scribe comes on and they see all the R6 stuff, they'd be like, oh, you're pumping that. Be like, well, if you saw where we started with RSIC, it's because of the airdrop. It was a first of a kind, and it was curiosity. And I'm always going to follow, and I know Disco too is going to follow where our passions go, where our curiosity goes. And then the rest will follow. And we're just going to continue learning in this space. And we want you guys to join us too. So exciting stuff, but really well thought out, Disco. And you've given me more food for thought on this whole freedom thing. But, I think Nostr is definitely an interesting pivot to take, because what worries me is we have so much media now and video on X, and I want to stay here. I want this to be the main town square. I love X. I love how it's evolving with video, but like if it doesn't have adequate decentralization, where there's a single point of failure from the databases to the content to our accounts, and everything is controlled by that single entity, I think Elon's going to protect us as best as he humanly possibly can, but there's a lot of pressures from, big government and the rest of the world to, there's certain actors that are going to make that very difficult for them.
Yeah. What I think the main thing that scared me the most in just kind of reviewing the story of what happened in Brazil is they were saying that they were going to fine users close to $9,000 per day. Right. So Elon can do whatever he wants. If you're sitting there as someone who's checking Twitter in your, on your phone or in your, basement or whatever, and you're sitting there like, dude, I'm not looking to lose 9 G's a day. So they can pull that lever. It's through no fault of the platform necessarily, but just the government being able to step in and impose basically sanctions on individuals for what they're doing that's what blew my mind the most.
Yeah. And it's actually worse than that. It's not for using X, it's for using a VPN. So they're basically
Oh,
saying, which is even more, that they're going to the source of how you
sinister.
could have some anonymity. But let's see. This is interesting how Brazil is making this their thing. I think there's people probably behind Brazil from other parts of the world that are pushing them to do this too. So this is a big fight. People are trying to close now that X is a subscription model. How do you lessen a subscription model? You offboard countries at a time. So it's a developing story. We're
Yeah.
here to support X. Like I said, not everybody on X is great, but you can also mute those people. You can also unfollow them. Disco, I remember when you and I first started doing this show, it's not like I did it great. I've done it way better now, but I curate my timeline. Like I unfollow people who are alpha, pumpy, whatever, and I really try and limit those almost entirely so I can get a clean feed and kind of curate the news how I want to see it. And you were getting a ton of like, everything was a pump, everything is a bot, and you've since curated and it's better now, right?
Yeah, I was all like jumping in on follow to follow these and all these pumps. And
There you
well,
go.
I really better pick up that like
Yeah,
super altcoin because that's super alpha. And I
yeah.
was like just chasing my tail because I was jumping in when I thought everyone was just cooking and everything was going to go up forever. And again, I go through that. Oh, I came in at the top, and I'm going to wear it as a badge of honor moving forward. It's and even in talking to Ski God last week, it's like you got to take your lumps along your journey to really kind of validate it. I remember the Chicago Bulls, like even with Mike in the beginning, like they had to go through the Detroit Pistons, and it took them a little bit of time. And they had some tough Eastern Conference Finals where they came back and they're like, you know what, we got to get better. We got to be what we're doing. So you go through it, you learn what you can from it, but the most important thing is sticking with it. And I know it's cliche, but just showing up every day because you're going to become your own improved algorithm just based on your experiences and the data points that you've learned from and the mistakes you've made. And I think you were exactly right. I was like, dude, it was Twitter at the time. Like, it's so stupid. I'm getting such bad stuff. You're like, well, dude, who are you following and what are you doing? I'm like, oh, maybe that's it. So I went in and tended to the garden a bit.
Yeah, I mean, the moral of the story on all of this is every interaction you have on X, every like, even like a pause scroll or a going into a tweet or whatever, that tells the algorithm that you're interested in that and you will keep getting fed it. That's why every interaction you'll notice, like, why do I keep getting fed that? Well, at some point, you liked what they had. So just stop interacting with it more, or even mute people for a while, or dare I say, unfollow some people for a while. It's fine. You can always follow them again later, but like clean your timeline up. It's not that hard, and it can be done. So
Yeah.
super developing topic, and it's something, the First Amendment we're going to keep talking about. Freedom of speech is the cornerstone. That's why it's the First Amendment and not the 31st Amendment. So we'll keep on it, but let's move on, Disco, to
Yeah.
we're not going to spend a ton of time on this next topic, but it's definitely worthy of discussion because I don't know about you, Disco, but right now I don't check every day. I really don't check most days, but my bags are down, and I think I
Yeah.
speak for a lot of people.
Well, you don't just speak for people in our space, and that's what always kind of pisses me off a little bit. It's like if we rewound to August 4th, I think it was the beginning of August, of last month, where the market tanked for no real reason, and we were like, hey, steady, it'll be okay, like this is happening, that's really nothing to do with the fundamentals. And I think that we've seen some stories that have kind of backed that out or back that up over the past week. One of them being that the Bitcoin hash rate hit an all-time high. So you're sitting there and you're seeing your bags go down, but then you're seeing the fundamentals of your thesis and of this movement be validated. And we've done countless shows talking about the adoption worldwide and how all this is going. We've talked about you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So all those things are in place. We're sticking in a range. I'm bullish that it hasn't just cratered, to be honest with you. Like, we're sitting here and I don't want to be like, oh, we're at 57 or 56 for Bitcoin. It's like, dude, remember what it was,
Yeah.
8 or 12 months ago or whatever. We'd be, throwing a parade to be, nestling around in that. And I think that there's a time for us to kind of understand that we're kind of getting close to these, year end projections. We're sitting here in September. We really only have a quarter and a month left. And I still think that, you can quote me on the show because I remember saying it, and I'm no financial future predictor, but I did say that I thought it would probably flirt around six figures at some point before the end of the year. And I still think that that's definitely the case. And I think that we're just going to have to go through this. And I'm more excited about the fact that the timeline's kind of shrinking. We've got past kind of the post-halving. All the signs still indicate that we're going to get to a good spot. And to me, again, God, I wish I had more couches to kind of root through and find some more liquidity, because nothing that I've seen has made me less excited about the potential, and not even the potential, the reality of what's happening with Bitcoin as an ecosystem and as a chain. So the fact that it's, you know, the market's down, Nvidia's down, everything's down, blah, 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 blah. Who cares? It's not, it hasn't cratered. It's not going to zero. And it's an opportunity, if you can find a few shillings, to continue to stack sats.
It's so funny, Disco. I don't know if you know this, but there's like 10 stories on why like Bitcoin and crypto's down. I think where I was like, it's down, and we'll get into it. And you just went into a full monologue and soliloquy on like why you're so bullish. Like, we're all bullish, dude. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. It's like, and it's cool to see it from you too, because the longer you're in it, the more you're like, you know, you never want to see the numbers go down. I mean, of course, but you don't worry about it, because there's so much, the news cycles are so fast now, you know, they're like 4 to 12 to 18 hours. I mean, and then they're gone. Yeah. Just like you said, with the shooting, the Trump thing, like it's not even like brought up anymore, which is nuts. Like the news cycles are so fast, and this too shall pass. But Bold Leonidas, I love, he's such a great memer in this space, and his drawings are awesome. And, you know, he just posted something a couple weeks ago, or like a week ago, saying like, you know what, I vowed 5 years just to get in this space and do it, you know, because as you and I know, doing a show, it takes time to like you said, find your sound as a band in the garage before you kind of go mainstream. And he's been doing this forever, and he has a huge following now, and I love his stuff. But you made a point, so I wanted to quickly pull it up. Like, I love that the Bitcoin Grim Reaper going into the, you know, the doors with the blood, the famous meme. It's just 60,000 over and over. So the point is like Disco said, if this were a year and a half ago when it finally jumped up from 20 or 19, like, we would be so thrilled, but we just keep going to 62, 64, even 70. Then we go back down to 56, 57. And then we just keep going up and down. And then people, it's like, it's awesome the first time we hit 60. And now it's like, it's terrible because we're crabbing so hard. But I don't know. You just got to look at the adoption. You got to look at the long term aspect of this and the long tail of just country, business, state, pension adoption, and it's hard not to be super, super bullish. So Bold Leonidas, thank you for all you do, and the memes that you give us daily, because they a picture, obviously cliche is worth 1,000 words, but your pictures just paint such a picture that sometimes words or just tweets cannot do.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, that kind of covers my take on the outflows. Like, okay, fine, let's check in a little bit. One thing that's interesting too, I wanted to kind of point out when you mentioned kind of how the assassination attempt has been kind of just in the rear view mirror. Right. I wonder if, you know, we're sitting here and next week there will be the first presidential debate, right? And we saw what happened as an outcome from the previous presidential debate. I wonder if we sit here and do the show after that next week, if the foundation will have shifted significantly as well. So it's just, when you're talking about news cycles and things like that, it was kind of like a, you know, before the debate and after the debate, and now Biden's gone and things have shifted significantly. So I'm not like fascinated by the actual debate, but I'm kind of fascinated about what the foundation will be immediately after it or shortly after, based on how it goes around.
So they finally agreed on a debate time.
Yeah, September 10th. Yeah, so it's, you know, it's next week.
Oh wow, so it's coming. Sweet. Yeah. So I know we're going out of order here, but
that's good.
Disco, you found this, that whereas Kamala was ahead, you know, Trump was killing Biden, then Kamala came in and was just killing Trump, and then they were neck and neck forever, and now Trump is slightly ahead. So it's Polymarket, it's crypto degen trading, but it's just interesting to see all the flip-flopping. And this particular Polymarket bet has just under $800 million to it. Like, that's almost $1 billion, Disco. Like, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. I know. Absolutely insane. So food for thought.
Really quick. When we were talking about Polymarket, one thing I wanted to just point out to everybody is just be somewhat aware of the fact that right now I think they're doing a transition from the Matic token for Polygon to Pol, which is the new token. You don't have to panic or anything. I think you have like 4 years to convert it if you're sitting on any Matic tokens, but that is going on. And I do want to at least shout out that Polymarket is built on that. And it does have, you're showing some significant traction there.
Sold mine long ago. Don't care. Sorry.
Well, nevertheless, there's
not a fan. So let's go to infamous block 3 here. So a lot of stuff going on in, we talked about Trump passing Harris and Polymarket. Where do you even want to go here, Disco, before we get to one of my favorite people in the space, Stephen Miller?
Yeah, I'll go pretty simple on it.
Right.
I'm just starting to see like a little bit of a recurrence or a resurgence of Gensler and the SEC kind of taking little snipes and stuff. And we did see one of the big stories that kind of came out in the last couple of days was this World Liberty Financial, which is like a new DeFi, proposal or
Right.
proposed platform tied to Donald Trump. And I just want to put it out there that I hope that there isn't like a way that the SEC or Gensler's trying to, catch what's going on with some of the things that are getting built out from that perspective. They had like Barron Trump is the DeFi master within the proposal for this and all that.
Yeah.
So I just get a little worried about it maybe getting, them finding that as a way to kind of tripwire, the broader space. And I'm just pointing out like a potential concern I have around there. And then it kind of solidified. And I know that you said that you knew this before. It was news to me, but TD Cowen, they put out a note about how Gensler could potentially stay in. And I know that at Bitcoin Nashville, Trump said he was going to fire him on day one, but I think that there's a couple things that are kind of written into how everything works there in terms of the makeup of the commission that I don't know if that's necessarily possible on day one. I think that, there could be pressure and maybe he would just step down because it would be somewhat inevitable or everything. But I don't know. I'm a little wary that, Gensler may have a little bit more fight left in him. He did the notice against OpenSea, which it's like, why are you doing that now? So I just have my little spidey sense up a little bit to be aware of, the people towards the end of their fight sometimes have a couple kicks left in them, and I just don't want to see him be able to get anything to go through.
Yeah, I think really the most important thing, I mean, the Trump boys are going to do what they're going to do. That account did get hacked. I think there was actually a scam exposed there because the account got hacked. So that's not a good start for them. But yeah, you want as little surface area as possible for Gensler to try and attack as we get into this as we're in this next election cycle. But, they're going to attack him left and right any which way possible. So, obviously the more concrete stuff they have, the better they can do. But he's been Teflon so far. But it's that Liberty Mutual doesn't seem like the best look, but clearly he's embracing crypto and DeFi, and we'll see what comes of that. So do we go to the eBay thing now, or do we have one more? Like I'm done with Gary this week. I'm so sick of that guy. But so I'm excited to welcome to the show Stephen Miller. So while we're talking here, I'm gonna get 3 down. I'm gonna get topic 4 up, and then Stephen, welcome to the show. I'm gonna put a picture of me. This is always the fun part, and then grab Steven right there. So welcome to the show, Steven. I love your background. I'm a big fan of old tiles in bathrooms that have hexagonal patterns from the 70s, because my last house in Chicago had that and I loved it. So I love your pattern. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. And I figured that I should at the very least lead by welcoming you to my bathroom then.
I love it. I'm sitting on the toilet right now. It's actually a bidet.
No, man, I'm really, really excited to be with you guys today. It's been a blast getting the chance to see you guys grow the show, and just honestly excited to be able to talk a little bit of art with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who don't know Stephen Miller, which most of you do, he is the person that I go to for any art questions on how something works programmatically, what he's looking at, what he's thinking about. And Steve, you're a huge asset to this space, and I know a huge asset, more importantly, to be a voice of the artists in this space, because we all know the artists who we know, and some of them are really good on social media, but a lot are good artists and they're not great on social media. And if you can't toot your own horn, this is a tough space to be in. If you weren't one of the early Bitcoin folks or maybe ETH folks, or don't have someone championing you, it's tough. And I feel like you champion artists and you turn over every stone and every leaf to find what's out there, what's minting the best of the best. So appreciate you and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's been a lot of fun getting the chance to try to make a bigger impact for artists in the space. I think that you just hit the nail on the head there. Not every single artist has that skill set where it's like, they can get out there, they can communicate exactly what it is that their story is, what they're trying to really share with the world. And to be able to find people out there that can help with that is it's invaluable for artists. So as I came into this space, specifically the art space in Web3, I really saw that as a main pain point. I wanted to make sure that we could tackle that and help them be a part of a larger art discoverability and art exploration movement. So I'm very happy to be able to still contribute and be able to make a difference for them. And it's what I plan on continuing to do.
Dude, that's fantastic, because one of the things that everyone's really striving for, right, is authenticity. And what you don't want to have to do is take someone who's really well adapted and can really create great art, and then put them in a format where they then have to like sell it or pitch yourself, and it's like, dude, that's not going to be necessarily as genuine as it should be. So I love that you can look at being an advocate and a voice and really help kind of give people the spotlight that they deserve for the work that they're doing, that comes not naturally to them, but comes organically from what they'd like to put out into the world. So I really appreciate that role, and I think it's certainly very needed. So kudos.
Thank you, Disco. I appreciate that. And that's also not to say that you can't do it if you're an artist. I think there are plenty like great artists out there that are doing it. You look at Jack Butcher, you look at Billy Rusty, you look at Coldy,
Duresh, Otto, so many
that do have it, that can do it. But then there's also a certain degree of them that have found that success and have also partnered or brought people onto their own teams that can help them cross that Rubicon. If you can't, you need to find the players out there that are able to help you.
Absolutely. So, Stephen, I don't know if you realize this. We have you still on the news part of the show, and we brought you on because I wanted to talk about an important topic. In our third show last year, we talked all about NFTs, and obviously why I made the migration and Disco has made the migration more to ordinals because they're on chain. So just recently, there's a company who's been in the space forever, mostly on the ETH side, called KnownOrigin. And KnownOrigin has put up a lot of really good timeless art from a lot of OG artists like Xcopy. I'll pull the tweet up in a second, but the laundry list is long. Well, they sold out to eBay in 2022, KnownOrigin did. And, the pinata bill, the IPFS bill is not being paid. So that stuff's not being pinned. Some of these beautiful pieces of art are only on OpenSea because of basically the files are cached over there on OpenSea, but they are no longer on Pinata. I'm just curious, someone who loves art for art's sake, whether it's, on Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, or that those things that you actually hang on the wall, what's it called, in real life, that art too. You love it all. What was your take, and what do you think about storage of art and how non-eternal some of this stuff is appearing to be?
So to give everybody who's listening a little bit of a background first, right? You run into this thing within the NFT and the digital art ecosystem where you have IPFS links, which are essentially just pointers to where that art is stored. And then you have art that is properly stored on chain. There are a lot of different examples of how both have been iterated upon. But at the end of the day, if something is IPFS, it's just specifically pointing you back to where that art is stored off chain. Or if you're going on chain, it's all purely stored there. To me, with what we saw with KnownOrigin, it was the beginning of a fall in a lot of ways. There's a lot of other big players within the art scene that originated back in that first massive wave for art in mid 2021 that are going to run into the same exact thing. So it's about, for me, conveying to artists, how are you going to plan for that contingency? How are you going to plan for making sure that your art is eternal? And I don't know if there is a really clear solution at this immediate moment for porting it. But what I can say is that there have been plenty of collections that have teleburned over from Ethereum to Bitcoin that have found pretty damn good success with it. I know Far in particular, I know he bridged Infinite's AI, Infinite's IRL, and even you have other, players in the space like OCM who bridged their entire collections over, right? Whether you decided, say whether or not that's art, I personally believe it is. Other people may have their own opinions on that, but it is still a way of moving your work over onto an on-chain environment. Now, you can still have on-chain art on Ethereum, but you have to make sure that it's properly stored on that blockchain, as opposed to just strictly relying on what the rest of the market has done with pointers.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's IPFS, obviously there's Arweave, but that is Arweave, people argue that is a little more secure. Arweave is used more on Solana. I think some Ethereum collections are using it, but that's also VC backed. And, if that doesn't turn out to be a big money maker, there is a point of failure there that is not on chain, right? So you've got CryptoPunks, you've got a lot of the OG collections, pretty much everything art blocks on Ethereum is on chain. Chaos Roads is on chain. I mean, there's so much stuff. I know MFers at some point went on chain. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So Ethereum does have a lot of on-chain art, but unfortunately, a lot of the art, including the most notable PFP collections, are on IPFS, and actually the Mutant Apes are on AWS. They have IPFS as the metadata layer, but the actual image is stored like on their website. So it's purely on cloud. And who am I to judge? But at the same point, like as I educated myself last year, and I know Disco did too, the more ordinals and Bitcoin just became, to me, a foregone conclusion of, you don't even have to ask if your art is on chain because it's in the, what is it? The UTXO. It's actually in the, what's the word I'm trying to find, but it's actually it's inscribed on the SAT in the text meta layer, whatever that's called.
Yeah, it cannot be like understated, right? Like you need to have that on-chain aspect, but at the same time, I do see the other side because there are constraints to it, right? You talk about, the size constraint over on Bitcoin all day long, and it exists. It's a real thing. But there's going to be a need for alternatives, and I think that you will find that on other chains that find new ways of storing on-chain art. For me personally, I only collect art that's on-chain anymore. I've had to completely turn away from collecting art that's IPFS stored. I even have some reluctancy with Arweave, but there are plenty of artists who are committed to keeping that art on chain, and you should be seeking those people out if you're interested in that layer of provenance and the immutability of it all. If you don't care, then and you just want to play the game, go play the game, but it's going to be a roll of the dice. You need to understand the risk of it.
And so back in 21 or whatever it was, right? It wasn't part of the conversation, and it was almost like, to me at least, an implied contract when everyone was kind of explaining non-fungible, oh, it's there, and you have it and da da da. So was that just not, was it just not unearthed at that point, like the importance of it actually being on chain? Is that a newer development with the advent of ordinals? Or like, when did CryptoPunks, when did they go on chain? Was that prior to the advent of ordinals or no?
If my memory serves, I believe that CryptoPunks went like fully on chain back in 2020 or 2019.
It was 21. Yeah. So they were 2017 because CryptoPunks were among the first, right? It was a pointer, and it was almost to like the whole sheet of CryptoPunks, because they were kind of inventing the space at the time. But yeah, they went fully on chain in 2021. But that's a good question, Disco. I feel like the OG NFT Ethereum enjoyers, a lot of CryptoPunks, a lot of early collectors have known the on-chain narrative. Like, I think real collectors eventually get to where Steven just said, like, I only collect on chain. I 100% agree with that thesis. So what are your thoughts on that, Steven? Like, has it always been in that core collector culture since the early days, or when CryptoPunks came on, it kind of became more of a importance?
So I actually still don't think that it's as important in the minds of most collectors as it should be. I think I'm very much on the outs, and I think that you are also on the outs there as well. Will it become more important as time goes on? Yeah, because we're going to start to see a lot more of that happen with, regard to the same sort of thing that we've seen on KnownOrigin. As that continues to build and time goes on and on and on, more and more collectors are going to recognize that, like, oh, we really do need to give consideration to it being on chain. A couple other really great examples that, like, it can still be rich in terms of the graphic appeal and the data layer of it all. You have cyber brokers over on Ethereum. It's entirely on chain, and it's extremely high resolution. Josie Bellini did a phenomenal job with that collection, and her entire team did. And they have bigger ambitions for it, but they're not moving it over to Bitcoin, right? Because they were able to deploy it all on chain appropriately.
Right. And there's so many collections, like Chaos Roads, a favorite of mine, Math Castles, like there's stuff on ETH, and the Math Castles founders, like the things that I did with this collection, he's a very confident guy, cannot even remotely be done on Bitcoin because they're entirely different systems. So I think if you're on chain on ETH, yeah, why would you move over? But I love that you have kind of offered a solution, which was going to kind of be my last question. Would that be your answer then to these collections who are off chain and knowing this, like that the easiest way to go immutable is to teleburn, right? It's to bring it over to Bitcoin. And Casey, love you, dude, because he basically, not only in every ordinal that is created, there is an address where you can send the Ethereum NFT, and they are inextricably forever connected, correct?
Yeah, so that's how they actually create the trail of provenance from chain to chain. And OCM, bless their hearts, like they actually were the ones that created a certificate mechanism that actually pointed directly back to it. So there's a lot of really great ways that people are finding around this, but I think the thing that is still missing, and I so badly want them to solve this, we need a much easier front end interface, because these artists are not all that technical, right? Some of them are, right? Plenty of these artists that have been code-based artists or been working with complex AI systems, GAN networks, all of that stuff, like they have the technical wherewithal to do this and go with the existing process for moving fully on chain. But there are probably tenfold more artists that don't have that technical skill set. So we need a better UI for those artists to actually properly port, whether that's on chain on ETH, on chain on Bitcoin would be my two recommendations. But they need something that will simplify it for them and will make it a much more plug and play process. So hopefully we'll see that come soon. But I mean, from what you've seen, have you noticed that like there is some level of immediacy or some level of urgency that you've seen within the community in terms of making that move?
Only since here, let's pull this tweet up again, but only since hold on, that's the surprise. Nahiko is the one. I didn't even know about this known origin until he brought it up, but there was a great conversation that he started, and basically I'm going to get this, pronounce it wrong, but one of my favorite people in the Ethereum space, Bharat Kaimo. Yeah, they're like, literally, if you scroll down, they are sounding, some big names are sounding the 5 alarm fire bell, not necessarily for the entire ecosystem to think about on chain, but really to get all of these old ones on chain, to make sure that they're safe. Now, I'm sure the 5 alarm fire also has to do with some of these very OG collectors own some of these assets that are now pointing to a page that is not resolving in the DNS, which, I mean, I laugh, but I would be so bummed if I had like a grail and that happened. So the 5 alarm fire is around that, and it's only recent in the last couple days, but I don't know if it'll expand further, because you're right. One of the hardest things that Disco and I face on this show is like, you know, I love my degen plays. I love my PFPs. I love my RSIC. But, you know, Steven, I think you and I were talking off show, like sometimes you're pinholed and known for like, oh, that's the RSIC pumper. It's like, no, so much more freedom of speech and Bitcoin is awesome. It's so hard with the algorithms now to kind of break through. And it's so hard to get people to care about what's most important, which for me, obviously, is art, right? But it's also freedom of speech, freedom to transact, freedom to have privacy. Just like in your home, you have a private conversation, you should be able to have those on the internet. So that First and Fourth Amendment, which are getting tested very greatly, like it's hard to get people to care. And I think what Disco and I have kind of come to the conclusion of, like, we love the degenning, we love all this stuff, we love art. So our goal is to bring you and different people with different things, and we're going to do what we love and see what resonates, and that goes from degen to up. So if the degen stuff is the one that unfortunately gets all the most retweets and likes and engagement, fine, whatever. But we're going to just keep peppering in thoughtful people like you who are empowering artists and doing the real work, and people like Eric Voorhees who are empowering privacy and freedom of speech and all these important things. So it's kind of I don't know if that's the devil's bargain we made or if it's just the realist bargain, but you know, we want to promote people in this space supporting each other and eventually, hopefully, teaching some of their normie friends in the next big wave that we know is coming in to be empowered to fight for those freedoms.
Yeah, no, and you guys are doing a really wonderful job of that, and you have been for quite a while now, at least in my opinion. Getting the chance to see, good people like Scribe on last week talking deeper about, while it is something that's more degenerate like RSIC, like diving into what that ecosystem is doing is super valuable. So, getting the chance to see all these different perspectives come into play here on Decentralends is exactly what this space needs. So I hope that you guys keep this, moving for quite a while. But I want to get one last thought in really quick on the art permanence side of things, because
Please.
there is a much bigger shoe that's about to drop, or at least I think could drop, that I think a lot of artists are not thinking about, and definitely the collectors are not thinking about. And that happens to be where you have known origin. It's one platform. It's one specific launchpad. You had plenty of art that was released on known origin over the years. What would you say if I told you an entire ecosystem is at risk?
I would say,
I'm alarmed.
Tell me more.
I am known on my own show, the Tuesday show that I run, Color Commentary, for giving one specific ecosystem a whole lot of shit, and that's Tezos. What people do not acknowledge and what they need to start acknowledging is that Tezos almost entirely stores their art on IPFS. Like if you look across the entire ecosystem, like it is possible to launch on-chain art over on Tezos, but Tezos is like the original art ecosystem here. That's
It
where
is.
so many
Yeah.
artists
There's
started.
so
Like,
much OG art there. It was cheap, and there was so many great artists. It was, you know what Tezos was in those early art days? It was art for art's sake. You could just scroll and look and be like a child again, innocently just looking and enjoying art to see what you love.
yeah, no, and that's exactly what it was. I would encourage exactly with what I was saying about like there needs to be better front end interfaces for artists to move their artwork to on-chain environments. If there's any one thing that a big group of artists needs right now, it's a mechanism to move away from Tezos. Because if they want to preserve that massive volume of art that's stored there, that is no Library of Alexandria. It really is not. Okay. It's basically your public library. It's not going to be there forever. So that to me is the bigger level of concern. I would be really worried about the artists that are over there. And I'd be looking, if I was an artist over there, I'd be looking at how I can move my art either to Bitcoin or to Ethereum.
Is there even a Tezos ecosystem anymore? I thought that had dried up long ago. You're saying, no, there's actually a vibrant ecosystem.
So they're trying to remain. It's hard for me to say that there is because I know that I do know there's a lot of artists that still exclusively launch on Tezos. And I'm not trying to downplay them. I'm not trying to.
You're being honest.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the concern, right? So to me, there is an ecosystem over there. There are plenty of big names that are still promoting art over there. But I see too much risk and too little reward.
Wow.
Food for thought for sure. So Stephen, the good news is obviously we're not going to go through the NFT built on quicksand section, but we'll reintroduce you and we'll go way more deep on kind of your story and stuff. Disco, there's a couple things I want to hit. And Stephen, you might even have a take on this.
Let's go.
I forgot to do it last week, so I'd be remiss if I didn't do it this week. I don't know if you are aware, Stephen, but Disco and I have been talking about this. There's the whole buzz right now in Bitcoin is, is Snoop Toshi said, and he's right, it's the next shiny thing. It's fractals. And, fractals, everybody, I think there's 1,000 L2s that are being built on Bitcoin. Until one hits, I don't find any of them that interesting because I feel like I saw what happened on ETH. The L2s, one could even argue like bridging is a pain in the ass. It's not clean. Most of those are still nothing more than multi-sigs with, a business development arm that are signing up pretty big folks there. So I mean, the ecosystem's building out. You got Polymarket. You've got things that are working there. Base is just crushing it. I would say that's Coinbase's probably biggest incubator that's just taken off. But, for Bitcoin right now, we have fractals, there's always been that want to tie back to mining. I guess what is bothering me about fractals and I will say like A6, Bongo, like these guys I love and I think they're doing good and they're good guys and they're actually going to have miners, real miners that they're picking up that are getting shipped to Nebraska and they have those new Fractal token miners that are going to mine that until Fractal goes to zero, and we all degen in and then they're going to switch to Bitcoin. So it's interesting, but I guess I just wanted to touch here on Fractal as a whole. To me, for those who have been around since the ICO boom, every ICO chart in the tokenomics was like this same like pie chart where it had like 6 or 7 pies. And, it always looks like most of it goes to the community, but really what it is, it's a breakout to me. So this is proof of work mining for Fractal, 50%. Goes to mining. And right away, I'm like, well, why don't I just have a miner and then 100% would go to me instead of, only 50%. So that's my first red flag right there. But then ecosystem treasury, 15%, pre-sale, 5%, advisor, 5%, community grants, 10%, and core contributors, I think is like 10 to 15%. So you get all these percentages. And what we found is, I think other deeds had this, a couple others did. the founders are in all of the buckets. Like a lot of this is going to the same VCs and the same people. So it's an interesting thing to pair ordinals with actual Bitcoin mining. But to me, this feels ICO all over again. So Disco, I know this wasn't on our slate of 5, but I forgot it last week. I just wanted to bring it up for a discussion. So I wanted to know if you had any thoughts, or Steven, you're welcome to pipe in. You're also welcome to plead the fifth.
I'm more pleading the fifth on it because I feel like, I go to the trading tables that are of interest and comfort, based especially on kind of our conversation last week. And I think that there's enough upside in ways that I don't need to kind of get cute, but I need to understand also my bias of my, generational and just my approach. Like I'm in a different stage of looking at things, and I think that I appreciate you shedding light on it, and I think we should continue to cover it because I know that it has mind share, but it's not something that I'm extremely interested in delving into. When you show the treasuries, that's one of the things that's so confusing still, is who really fits into all those different pieces of pie, and how many are kind of omniscient and you're present in all of them. So I don't really have a hot take on it, to be honest.
Steven, you want to share anything, or you want to plead the fifth?
I'm sitting here just like grinning, just like, do I really want to say it? But hey, we're on video, we're on Decentraland. Let's go on the record. There are a couple of things that come to mind with this. One is a conversation that I got the chance to tune into and be a part of with one of the guys that is like a lead at Marathon Mining, and they were really, really, really hard, like steadfast on the fact that all of these ideas of like a L2 on Bitcoin just does not make sense. And we have plenty of examples of like how it has not made sense in the past. Lightning, what a wowing, resounding success that was, right? That was supposed to be an L2 on Bitcoin. You can make a case that Stacks has been a successful iteration of it, but the examples of how it has succeeded in the past are few and far between, but you hit it right on the head out the gate. The experience of moving from an L1 to an L2 today is still not only extremely stressful, but it's one of those practices where it's like so much can go wrong. So why are we going to try to do this with the gold of our ecosystem? Why are we going to try and move from a Bitcoin L1 to an L2 when we could theoretically be putting so much of our wealth at risk? So to me, that is a reason enough to stay away from it. But there are certain ecosystems where it is working, right? Like Base, they've clearly figured out a way to make that a lot more streamlined. It works, but I'm not willing to risk what I've got on Bitcoin yet to move to Fractal for, a theoretical airdrop.
Well said. Well said. All right. Before we move into the interview section of this show, I just wanted to share one thing. I mentioned it last week because I think it had just gotten approved, but yours truly, Blutoshi, just like his father before him, was a curler. And I've been talking to one of my favorite people in the space, Brennan. Brennan, hope you're doing great out there on the West Coast. And your health is doing great. But Brennan worked with me, and we got the Nouns Chicago Curling Club sponsorship. Not only did we get it passed, but I guess for the first time in forever, Seneca and some of the OGs voted. So we got more votes in the last year than anybody. So it was one of those quirky things. I've been thinking about it forever. I put it together last second, but basically Nouns, and I can't wait to show what the actual artwork looks like, because it's I've already got the first draft of what the curling house is going to look like, and it's going to be awesome. But this guy's going to be the star, now 904. Even though I'm an ordinal and a Bitcoin lover at heart, Nouns I do love. I think DAOs are the messiest, most poorly run things ever, but I gotta say that Nouns have taken the DAO and they've stayed with it, and as far as DAOs go, they've figured out how to manage it as best as possible. It's created these different kind of cool groups and fiefdoms who do voting, and I got to learn all about that as I pitched this. But, you know, Nouns is doing a lot of good in the world, and they're supporting a lot of cool things like education and worksheets and pamphlets for teachers who don't have the money otherwise to help these kids with like math sheets and English sheets. You know, they don't have to pay someone. There's so many good ideas. But I put this together. As you can see, I copy pasted a lot of stuff. I think Blutoshi is actually in that picture. Or no, I'm just cut off because of the little house right there. But that was the finals last year. I won't tell you if we won or lost, but I wasn't thrilled about it. But it's a great sponsorship. I can't wait for it. And it passed, and I'm excited because
congratulations.
Is quirky, Web3 is quirky, and curling sure as shit is quirky. So it's a good one for us all to finish on. But I can't wait to show you guys the art and what the house is going to look like. We go live in about a month to start curling.
So it'll be ready for a bond spiel.
It's a bond spiel, and it will be ready for the October 11th bond spiel, which I haven't found out if I'm in yet, but I was in it last year, so I am optimistic because that's how you get the rust off. But it is one of the most strategic sports you can imagine. It's like golfing where all four people, that's where Steven could hit his drive and then I can sweep in front of it and straighten it out and make it go further. So it's a super strategic sport. It changes all the time, but super excited for this one.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
awesome.
That's huge.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's fun stuff. Like I like my resume is turning into like company owner, Web 2, and digital marketing and development guy to like this. Like I'm more proud of this than a lot of the stuff I've done over the years for the other company. It's just fun and it's cool. And I know everyone's going to have that like look on their face, be like, what the fuck is Nouns? You know, like I'm gonna interview people, get it up there, because you know that people be like, what the hell is this? Like they paid you what to do what? It's like, hey, Nouns is about propagating nouns. So with that said, Disco, do we have any more stuff before we Steven, stay with us? We do the outro and then we do an intro and then we have you right here and then we have fun and we go.
Yeah, no, I'm antsy to move on. So as always, the show's for entertainment purposes only. Please don't construe anything to be financial advice. Do your own research and protect yourself and enjoy the ride. And with that, thank you for tuning in this week.
Yep. Take care, everybody.